Okay. So every now and then, I do like to step outside of my comfort zone a little bit and try some decks other than Death Shadow just to see what life is like on the other side of the fence. And one of the decks that I come back to a lot is Domain Zoo. I think it's got a lot of really cool, powerful creatures like Territorial Kavu, obviously Ragavan we know about. Neshoba Brawlers are really great, just beater in the unfair matchups. Scion of Draco dodges a lot of removal, kind of like we see out of a Shadow of Mortality, dodging things like Prismatic Ending, Lightning Bolt. Uh, Also get to run 4 Stubborn Denial, and if you know anything about me, Stubborn Denial is absolutely one of my favorite cards in all of Modern. So being able to just like jam 4 of those into a deck has a lot of appeal. But Zoo gets to play like a really good tempo-ish game plan with a bunch of early 1 drops, Ragavan, Wild Nicodle, kind of pair those into these really cool 2 drops, and then finish your opponent off with lightning bolts, tribal flames, like big damage burn spells. You also get access to leyline binding, which is just ridiculously efficient removal as long as the mana requirements aren't that big of an issue. We've seen on stream, we've played like 5 color zoo with Death Shadow and Thoughtseize before, and it's been okay at times, but sometimes you just want to play the deck as it's meant to be, just a little bit more consistency. So I was browsing around through some of the zoo lists, and I saw this list that had 3 tireless trackers in it. It top aided some event. I don't think it was a challenge, but it had these 3 tireless trackers, and I was like, oh, like obviously I'm sold. I gotta play with tireless tracker. The only difference, or I should say, the only 2 differences between this list I got on screen and the original list is the original had a second Jermoka's command over the third Neshoba Brawler. I kind of wanted just like a little more threat consistency. And then in the sideboard, it had 2 copies of Orvar, where I saw Black Belt MTG also on YouTube. Great chat or great zoo player. Has a lot of awesome content, but he was advocating for 2 reprieve in the sideboard, kind of like a white delay that doesn't say counter. So it gets around things like Cavern of Souls, Veil of Summer, uncounterable against like, what was it called? Supreme Verdict. So I figured I'd try out the 2 reprieves just to see what they looked like. And then obviously that Neshoba Brawler, Dramoka's command swap. So this is kind of the list that I came to and decided just to run it through a couple leagues, see what happened. And I think this was the second league. The first league I ran the original list and either 3-2 or 4-1. I've got that one recorded. I'll probably upload it too at some point, but I wanted to go over this one. This was just like, oh, I've made a couple changes. Now it's kind of my list a little bit. So, first match on the play, we've got turn 2 Territorial Kavu, which is phenomenal. Just kind of hoping that we're in a matchup where Kavu's going to get to come down, live, start wreaking some havoc. Since I've got the Sacred Foundry, just going to grab the Zagoth Triome, pair it up with the Kavu. Now we have access to like steam vents off the Flooded Strand if we need to bolt. But I mean, any third land still lets us like bolt and play a Scion of Draco. So opponent decides to chump block with the Cauldron Familiar, and then follow up the Viscera Seer, or follow up the Samwise with the Viscera Seer. If you don't know, this is an infinite combo with Samwise Gamgee, Viscera Seer, and Cauldron Familiar. So Viscera Seer enters, makes a food token because of the Samwise Gamgee trigger that says whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, you make a food token. So it makes a food token, use the food token to get back Cauldron Familiar, immediately sack the Cauldron Familiar, or the Cauldron Familiar enters, makes a food token off Samwise. You sack the Cauldron Familiar to the Viscera Seer, and then use the food token that you made off the Cauldron Familiar entering to get back the Cauldron Familiar, make a new food token, and just repeat the loop. And every time Cauldron Familiar enters, it drains your opponent for a life. So make sure we break that up. Go ahead and exile the Cauldron Familiar while they don't have any food. Get down another Scion, and we're just going to go to town, kind of, hitting our opponent in the face. I do go for Underworld Cookbook and the manufacturer, so we're just going to, like, knock out the manufacturer so they don't get treasure and clues and whatnot. And, yeah, hit our opponent in the face again. Exile combo pieces. I'm not really concerned about the Cauldron Familiar because this Territorial Kavu has First Strike and Trample thanks to Scion of Draco. So, one of my favorite, I guess, philosophies in Magic is just get your opponent dead. And I think that really showcases with Zoo sometimes. So, opening hand, doesn't have red mana, doesn't have white mana with Ragavan and Tribal Flame, so it's a little awkward. Sideboarding, I did bring in a couple EE and a couple Rest in Peace to stop combo. This hand doesn't have white or black. We're not too concerned about black, but we can at least play like a Wild Nicottle into a Kavu, and if we find a third land, we're holding up Stubborn Denial, so that's pretty sick. Instead, we find a tear for an Academy Manufacturer. Still looking for that third land, but at least we have the ability to put some sort of pressure out. And I do really feel like if we can find a third land, then we can kind of put some serious pressure on. Unfortunately, Cookbook with an active Asmo is probably going to be a little more than we can handle right now. If we had the extra land, maybe we could fight through it a bit, but no land, no fight through. So yeah, brought in Wear Tear, Engineered Explosives, Rest in Peace. Wear Tear fights over like what's it called? Oh, I can't think of the name. Urza Saga really well. Here the Goose is loose. Again, we get to Zagoth Triome and Sacred Foundry. Decide to go for the Neshoba Brawler just because it has a little more pop to it. Hit a little bit harder. Asmo in a cookbook. Definitely taking out the Asmo. And then here, I just want to like apply as much pressure as I can. Like in this case, they do get another Asmo. They can shoot down one of my threats, but I do have a bolt for the second Asmo. Or just a hit at Sugu. I mean, I guess we'll take our 4-for-1. Now we just have lethal with like a lightning bolt. Unless we get pending, but that's okay because we get to flip Hidetsugu in a couple turns, or just draw Kavus and Rest in Pieces, and feel like there's not a lot of things my opponent can have to get out of this. So either they end up taking the Kavu, which means they also get to take a bolt to the face. Oh, so that was still match 2, match 1. I don't know. I think this is match 2. Yeah, match 1 was DP Ray. So on the play with the Ragavan, this Windswept Heath can get us a Temple Garden unless we, just draw the Temple Garden. All right. So if you know anything about Tron, you know without a shadow of a doubt that they have the third Tron land already in hand, and they didn't actually need this this expedition map. Oh, it's bad Tron. Heck yeah. I mean, when I say bad Tron, I just mean like Eldrazi Tron. It's like the Tron that doesn't do the game-ending game actions. It's Tron that does like little meh actions. Um, So my opponent dismembers my Neshoba Brawler here, which means they go down to 4. They're guaranteed taking 2 off one of these because I can just pump the Walking Ballista, which puts them dead to the Walking Ballista pings regardless of how they block. Which is pretty fun. But yeah, I usually call, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that calls Eldrazi Tron bad Tron, because hey, when you make all this mana and then your big follow-up play is to drop like a Thought Knot Seer, it's a lot less scary than, oh, I made a bunch of mana and I'm going to like Ugin now. All right, so we get to hit our opponent in the face. They do have access to Tron next turn. We're just kind of hoping whatever the payoff is isn't that bad. Again, bad Tron. Ugin map Chalice on 1. Okay. Thought Knot Seer, double Thought Knot Seer. Okay. We'll move on. 18 life, double Thought Knot. Take both our Tribal Flames. You can have this one, I guess. What did I sideboard against E-Tron? I sideboarded to Fairy because of like Chalice of the Void. Also, just a reasonable tempo play to like turn 1 hit with Ragavan, turn 2 to Fairy bounce your map or something. Decided to tick up to Fairy, so if they play like a Chalice, a Matter Reshaper, or something like that, I can fight over it here. Get down our double beater. Matter Reshapers. So many Matter Reshapers. So just to Fairy bounce one of these, get some damage in. Opponent can trade with something. I do get a relic, not the end of the day. Not the end of the world. Alright, you ready for this? Opponent floats 9. Float 9, play a Matter Reshaper. Okay, good on you, Tron. Play another Matter Reshaper. Ah, the old triple Matter Reshaper off 9 mana with a Matter Reshaper in the yard. Nice. Be a shame if somebody top decked a Scion of Draco and gave everything first strike. That would be crazy. So they're going to get a world of Matter Reshaper triggers, but at least we don't lose anything. Just hoping the follow-up's not too bad. All right, Karn the Great Creator. I also didn't realize this interaction at first. I mean, it makes total sense, and I'm just an idiot for not realizing it. But obviously, they can blow up all of our lands with Sundering Titan if they just go like Plains for Sacred Foundry, Island for Breeding Pool, Mountain for Steam Vents, Swamp for Overgrown Tomb. We do at least get to exile the Sundering Titan, but I didn't think about the fact that it just kills the Territorial Kavu. Because, hey, I've got no lands or no basic land types. So, I thought that was kind of funny. We do, unfortunately, need to kill... Or we don't need to kill Karn. We need to knock Karn down low enough to where it can't tutor something up. And opponent scoops after that. They could, like, fire up Karn or tick up on map, but ticking up on map doesn't really do anything if you're dead to the Scion of Draco in the air. And you can't get a bridge. So this is match number 3. Again, we can like Sacred Foundry into Breeding Pool or something if we need to bolt on 1, Brawler on 2. We can also Sacred Foundry into fetch up a tapped Zagoth Triome if we need to Leyline Binding. Goblin Guide shows Tireless Tracker. Yeah, if they want to kill the Brawler, that's fine with me. Oh, I remember this game because this cracked me up. We're going to keep count of the amount of damage my opponent points at my creatures between now and the end of the game and review our life total at said point. I don't have anything else to showcase numbers with, so we might have to roll over. That's clearly a 12. Get down there, little wild Nicottle. All right, Swift Spear's fine, whatever. All right, can't point that one at my creatures. But yeah, I thought it was pretty funny that I'm sitting here at 10 life and my opponent has used 12 points of burn on my creatures. And I do not think I was out racing them. At least I was not out racing them with known information. Like when I played out the Neshoba Brawler and they killed it, Brawler was a 3/3. So that wasn't out racing. All right. Now, I, on the other hand, am not the burn deck. I would like to point some spells at my opponent's creatures. Hopefully, they flip me into some lands. Nope, just a Tribal Flames. Okay. So here we're going to pass through, let our opponent attack, use this Goblin Guide as a free scry. I don't really want the Ragavan. I'd rather get down like a big territorial Kavu here. So I'm going to shuffle away the Ragavan, play the Kavu. Opponent does just have 5 cards in hand, so there's a very good chance we're going to get unalived, especially if we can't find a copy of Stubborn Denial. So just going to play out our dudes. That's all we can do. I see. On to game 3. There is such a huge disparity in Modern between being on the play and on the draw. And it really showcases in games like that where you're on the draw and life just looks horrible the entire game. All right. So we got a pretty painful mana base if we want to curve out. But on the bright side, our curve out is just like Kavu with Stubborn Denial, potentially Leyline Binding. Throw away one of these EEs. All right, so I know my opponent suspended this Rift Bolt. I'm playing out the Neshoba Brawler because if they point the Rift Bolt at the Brawler, like, I'm thrilled. That is fantastic for me. And then just ditch this other ditch the other EE because it's very mana inefficient at this point. Man, words are tough. And I kind of figure I've got lethal burn with the 2 tribal flames, so I don't really need another Kavu. Just figure, hey, if I happen to find another Stubborn Denial, I'll take it. But here I get to just Leyline Binding the Swift Spear, which would let me Stubborn Denial any sort of burn spell or protection spell or whatever. Turn 1, Swamp Relic O Progenitus. So mono black Coffers. I have no idea like how this matchup is, but I figure with triple tribal flames, it's got to be at least kind of okay. That being said, I kind of realized very quickly, oh, they just have Field of Ruins like crazy. So there's a very reasonable chance that they might just like strip mine away everything I hold dear. But at least we don't care about relics much. Scion's good. Go ahead and be mana efficient. Kind of figuring if we get one hit in with this Scion, then we can Tribal Flames for lethal. Or they Karn for Sunder. Why is this everybody's go-to? Why do people get bored and they're just like, I'm going to go Karn for Sundering Titan in the leagues? That sounds fun. Sounds like a jolly good time. All right. So at that point, I kind of realized, though, if I attack the Karn, I'm just dead to the Sundering Titan. So be it. Let's see, Mulligan decision. I really like going back over Mulligan decisions because I always think they're pretty interesting. Uh, unless your Mulligan decision is just, hey, I've got no lands, and then I guess it's pretty straightforward. But here we at least have like turn one Wild Nicodle. Since we get the breeding pool, we can Flooded Strand for a Savai Triome, get the Nicodle up to a 3/3 to start hitting, and then just like have Stubborn Denial to maybe protect it for a couple turns. Decided to save the stub. Mostly I wanted to save the stub because if I did find a ferocious threat, stub could like hit anything after that. But decided that, yeah, I like got lucky to top deck the Scion of Draco, made the stub decision look good. But if I kept the Flusterstorm, it'd probably get dead pretty quickly. So it's gonna Demolition Field. Have to get a basic, so I had to get the Forest. Feels bad with this Tribal Flames in hand, but hey, we get to tempo out a little bit. If we find a red source, we can kill with Tribal Flames. Red source that is not. So decide to just cycle it, give myself a chance at drawing the red source. Karn for bridge. We can win with a red source. Nope, just Giganta. Sundering Titan again. You would think it's looking bleak for our heroes here. That's what you might be telling yourself. We get Flooded Strand to not have to crack into Demolition Field. And then this hilariousness. So we've got double fetch, so we can get our colors to be able to Tribal Flames. Opponent goes for the Demolition Field, which we don't have another basic. But what we do have off this Flooded Strand is our good buddy Steam Vents. That, if you know anything about Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, gains the Swamp typing, which allows us to Tribal Flames 4/3. Yay. So fortunate our opponent didn't have a second copy of Demolition Field or Field of Ruin, but hey, we do what we gotta do. Sideboarding decision again. Go back. Yeah, that first hand. Why stop? First hand, just too slow on the draw. Like, I got turn one Wild Nicodle, turn two, I'm hitting for 2 and doing nothing. So, pretty easy ship. this hand, double Ragavan means at least the first one's protected from hand disruption. I can go get a Sacred Foundry for Ragavan here. If Ragavan gets to connect, then we can get a tapped Zagoth Triome and get down Scion of Draco. Unfortunately, Ragavan does not connect because he's a little punk. But at least we have access to Scion of Draco this turn, possibly. Get Urborg, fetch up a Steam Vent. So now we have all of our colors online, as well as Stubborn Denial and or Flusterstorm up. Which, if you've heard me say it once, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. I do like casting me some Stubborn Denials. All right, and then opponent missing the land drop there is huge. So Flusterstorm, Stubborn Denial, Ferocious Threat, 4-turn clock with 2 counter spells. I want to use my most restrictive counter spell as soon as I can, because if my opponent just top decks like another Cabal Coffers, then Flusterstorm is dead. But here, we're on to something. Big old March of Wretched, no. March of Wretched, get out of here. All right, 1-turn clock with a negate. Nice. Love to see it. Love to see it. I love a good counterspell out tempo game plan. I don't know if Reprieve is a card I really wanted to bring in that matchup, since I feel a lot of the time they'd be able to just recast the thing. But I did. Here we are. All right, so Esper Sentinel. I thought it was Hammer Time based off the Horizon Canopy, but as soon as I saw Iganjo Castle, kind of realized it's like either Taxes or Mono White Human, something like that. Which Solitude pretty well gives away, or Solitude would give away Taxes, but with discarding Adeline means I believe it's Mono White Humans. We're going to Tribal Flames Adeline, get that out of the way. It is kind of fun playing a deck that gets to pseudo Stonewall Sanctifier on Vec. I'm not used to that happening. But if opponent draws dead, we do have just like Scion attack in the air plus Tribal Flames. So, or Bolt. This was a punt. I Tribal Flames. I should have bolted because I gave my opponent the out of having, what's it called? Shining Shoal plus a reader, like another white card to redirect damage, because they were drawing off this Esper Sentinel, because I forgot that the Esper Sentinel was draw 2 or pay 2 instead of pay 1 after it got the counter from the Thalia's Lieutenant. So it should have been bolt you, pay 1 for the Thalia, pay 2 for the Esper Sentinel. You've got no outs. So, mistake, big mistake, didn't go unpunished. Or did go unpunished. Sorry. You know what I mean. Game 2 on the draw. Really, I just kept this hand because it clogged up the ground extraordinarily well. Like, this deck has EE as the only potential, like, sweeper. And even that's not that great. Really don't need blue mana very much, so I'm fine just getting this Wild Nicottle up to a 3/3. Trading out when I can, because again, I've got the ground pretty well covered. Decided to play out the Neshoba Brawler instead of the other Kavu because the Neshoba Brawler was going to be sacrificial fodder. Like one way or the other, I was just throwing that thing out in front of something. So I know that I've got the Ragavan and the Wild Nicottle, and that I'm casting an EE on one. But again, I'm like completely fine just throwing these in front of stuff and trying to rebuild afterwards because now I've got a Kavu, I've got 2 clue tokens to crack. My opponent's down to 1 card in hand. Like, let me take my advantage and run with it instead of trying to like fight it. All right, so they Shining Shoal my Kavu. Decide I want to be mana efficient and crack my clue. I am dead to a second copy of Shining Shoal. But if they don't have exactly a second copy, then I'm looking pretty solid. And opponent, I believe, scoops it up here. Because, hey, staring down multiple Scion Dracos and Territorial Kavu and not having the Shining Shoal, kind of cringe, am I right? But yeah, that was actually a trophy with Zoo, which felt really good. The deck felt very, very solid. I really like the tireless trackers. I know that they're a little clunky, but just like a tireless tracker plus a fetch land got me out of multiple situations there, just giving those extra card draws. And outside of Territorial Kavu, Zoo really doesn't have much in terms of like card advantage. Uh, so seeing Tracker get a little bit of standout play there was really nice. I would really feel cool about having a match where I could like turn 1 hit with Ragavan, turn 2 play a Tracker, turn 3 fetch land like something else. Like I know a lot of people want to wait until they have the fetch land to follow up the Tracker or something like that. But I think there's a lot of merit to being mana efficient, just getting the Tracker down early and seeing if your opponent's got the answer for it. If they do, then you can follow it up with like a Kavu, Brawler, whatever. If they don't, then Tireless Tracker is just going to run away with the game. Um, Stubborn Denial, A plus. Like I say it all the time in Shadow decks. Card is absolutely cracked. So if you're looking for a counter spell, Stubborn Denial is probably your answer. Never Saw Reprieve. Rip was fine. Flusterstorm was good. Teferi was fine. Hidetsugu was great, especially if we're seeing a lot of these food decks running around. Wear Tear and EE are pretty good. I have played these food decks like 2 or 3 times now with Zoo. And what I'm finding out is I'd much rather just be proactive with threats than worry about controlling kind of the board. So there's a reasonable chance that I'm going to stop bringing in like wear tear and just rely or wear tear and rest in peace and just rely on like EE and Hidetsugu as being kind of sweeper effects. That way I don't have to board out so many like threats to try to make that matchup a little better. But yeah, hopefully this is a cool change of pace from the normal shadow content of the channel. As always, I'll have the deck list down below, as well as a link to the Twitch channel if you want to come catch a live stream. Have a link to the Twitter in case you want to know the first place it goes live whenever we're announcing a new stream. And a link to the Control Freak Discord if you want to come talk about not only all things Death Shadow, but we can chat about Zoo. Why not? So, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.